Harry's wife. The land of make-believe is over. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. More problems for Harry's wife as the pile-on continues with regard to the end of the Spotify deal and Bill Simmons' observations about her and Harry. This is an article by Meghan McCain for the Daily Mail, but it also demonstrates a fundamental inability to recognise what Harry's wife is and what that means, as I shall explain. The title states, "The fucking grifters, 3 shattering words that must make the Duke and Duchess of Delusion realise their land of make-believe is crashing down before their very eyes." It feels like a watershed moment, doesn't it? The fucking grifters. 3 bombshell words that must surely have brought the land of make-believe crashing down before their very eyes. Because, for the Duke and Duchess of Delusion, this can only go one way now. And here's a clue. It's not towards global domination. Yes, American sports supremo Bill Simmons has been openly critical of Harry and Harry's wife before, but this time he's also speaking in his commercial role as Spotify's head of podcast innovation and monetization. The fucking grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them, Simmons said in an episode of his own podcast on Friday, following the news that Spotify have exited their $20 million deal with Harry and Harry's wife. "I got to get drunk one night and tell the story of the Zoom I had with Harry to try and help him with a podcast idea. It's one of my best stories," he added. But we already know how that story goes. For this is a couple who, though they have fled their gilded palaces, still live in a fairy tale fantasy of their own making, or, pausing there, as I have described it, their awful shared fantasy. A couple who arrogantly bamboozled the CEO of Disney while on a red carpet to demand voiceover work back in 2019. Sense of entitlement, lack of accountability for behaviour. A couple who, despite plunging popularity ratings, have spun, sold and rerun their tired tale of pity so many times because they still somehow believe that their interminable grievance tour is the best ticket in town. But now the market has spoken. Harry's wife's Archetype series has been savagely scrapped after just one pitiful season amid reports that Spotify bosses were frustrated over the snail-slow pace of production coming out of Monty's shit show. Just 13 episodes since the deal was signed in December 2020. It may end up costing the couple a cool $10 million. It's also no secret that Archetype's listening figures quickly plummeted after initial success. And we all know why. It simply committed the worst possible sin in Hollywood. It was drop-dead dull. Of course, the official line is that they've mutually agreed to part ways, and that they're proud of the series we made together. However, if Simmons' brutal takedown proves anything, it's that recollections of this short-lived partnership will no doubt vary over at Spotify headquarters. But wait a second, isn't this what Harry and Harry's wife wanted, to live and work in the real world? A world unconcerned with crowns and silly ceremonies where men and women have to actually strive for success, and where the brutal bottom line decides what's hot and what's suddenly not. Surely the barefoot prince and his girl-next-door wife couldn't have so utterly underestimated how difficult life outside the British royal family could be that they'd actually have to work for their money. Well, if those pictures of Harry's wife, looking glum in overcast Santa Barbara and clutching a $5,400 handbag close to her chest, are anything to go by, perhaps this has all come as something of a shock. Perhaps she thought that Spotify would be tripping over itself to cut her another fat check to retread the same old victim activist cliches in a carbon copy second series of archetypes, that legions of Sussex superfans would be all too happy to tune in. For more mindless chatter with Paris Hilton about the word bimbo and padding in your bra, or cod intellectual babbling about the duality of diva with Mariah Carey. Or perhaps she just didn't know how much of a hard gig it would be. Many of the best podcasters produce 5 episodes a week. Excuse me. I produce 8 to 10 videos a day. Certainly, as someone who built a career hosting daily news and chat shows on both TV and radio, I know all too well the commitment, McCain writes, the exhausting hours, the sacrifice away from family that it takes to make these programs a success. Whatever the case, Spotify has clearly decided that time's up for Harry and Harry's wife. Now, for someone like Harry at least, born into a world so unimaginably detached from normality, it's easy to see why he may have underestimated the challenge of what lay ahead. Indeed, it was telling earlier this month when the petulant prince appeared in a UK courtroom and admitted that he wasn't aware of any evidence to support his claim that he had been hacked by a British tabloid, but that he would nonetheless feel a sense of injustice if he did not win his case. The defence accused him of being in the land of total speculation. No matter what Harry says of his newfound freedom, it's clear he was never properly prepared for the rigours of the adult world. But as for plain old Harry's wife, whatever happened to the hard-working actress who was raised on $4.99 salads, who took all the odds and ends jobs to help pay the bills, who wrote letters to Hillary Clinton, campaigning for social justice age 11? Perhaps she became much more royal than she'd like to admit. But here's the hard truth. After countless tell-all interviews, talk show appearances, misery memoirs, Netflix wine-a-thons, and yes, pointless podcast, public interest in brand Sussex is drying up. There were early signs that this would happen. Last May, Netflix, with whom the couple still have a reported $100 million deal for the content, scrapped Harry's wife's animated series Pearl. A series exploring Harry's work with the Invictus Games was also delayed by Netflix in 2020 to make way for the pair's controversial 6-part docu-series which aired last December. It's now said to be scheduled for release this summer, but will it ever see the light of day? One wonders too about the remaining tomes in Harry's promised 4-book deal with Penguin, reportedly worth $25 million. After the publication of his Todger-stuffed memoir Spare in January, the couple's popularity hit new lows. Could they survive the damage of a further 3 books? Last month, following the breathless statement from Harry and Harry's wife's spokesperson alleging they'd been victims of a 2-hour near-catastrophic car chase in Manhattan, even the Queen of Woke, Whoopi Goldberg, cast doubts on their story. Out here, in the real world that they so desired, they've lost their families, their royal privileges, and even the liberal elite, and now big business has called their bluff. Who will be next to step off the grievance tour bus? But Meghan McCain believes that being called the fucking grifters must make Harry's wife realise the land of make-believe is crashing down before their very eyes. It won't. She's deluded. Her narcissism's job is to continue to cause her to believe that she is the centre of the universe, that she is special, that everything revolves around her. And although she will see that things are going wrong, she's not blind to that. She can see that the deal has been cancelled. She can see the criticisms. But she doesn't believe that it is her fault, because the narcissism will not let her ever believe this. In some instances, of course, it can cause a narcissist to not even see the problems that are occurring. No, there's nothing to see here. And they obviously believe that. But Harry's wife can see the problems. Her mid-range status enables her to see the problems. What it won't do is allow her to take accountability for them. The content she created was dull. She doesn't think so. You might think to yourself, how is it that she can't see that she's at fault? How is it she can't see the content was dull? How is it she can't see that people are tired of the whining and the self-pity and the pity plays? Surely she must be able to see that. But she can't. She sees the outcome, but can never have the causal link to her behaviour. Some narcissists don't see the problem. Some narcissists, such as Harry's wife, will see the problem, but the causal link between her and that problem is severed by the narcissism. Many people struggle to grasp how that can be, but that's how her narcissism works in order to protect her. Take, for instance, somebody who's got dementia. They don't recognise their own son. They don't sit there and think, I know this is my son, but I'm going to say that I don't recognise them for shits and giggles. And you might think, how is it that somebody can't recognise their own son? Somebody that they've known for 50, 60 years. Surely they must be able to recognise them. But you accept, don't you, that they can't because that is a symptom of dementia, that it affects the memory, it affects the recognition. Narcissism is similar. So what is important for you to grasp is that in the same way that you understand that dementia affects somebody's ability to recognise somebody and remember certain events, even if they'd only taken place over the last day or two, because that's the way the brain is being affected by the dementia, this is the way the brain is affected by narcissism. It causes the narcissist to see the world differently. It causes the narcissist to see it through a lens of control, through seeking the prime aim subconsciously. And therefore, by understanding that is the way that her brain works, that she can never ever accept it's her fault because her brain never allows her to contemplate that, in the same way that a dementia victim isn't able to recognise their son because the brain doesn't let that information through. Her narcissism, that way that her brain functions, will not allow her to accept that she's at fault. And you can sit down and explain it to her until you're blue in the face. Look, you did this, it failed. You did this, it failed. You're unpopular because you did this, this, and this. It simply won't compute. She doesn't sit there thinking, I know you're right, but I'm going to carry on lying. She thinks you're wrong. There's always an excuse, an explanation. That didn't happen, or it didn't happen that way, or okay, it happened, but it wasn't down to me. And Meghan McCain thinks that the revelation from somebody that they are fucking grifters will cause her to realise that the land of make-believe is crashing down before their very eyes. She won't. She can see that there are problems, but they're not attributable to her, and she still believes that that land of milk and honey is hers, and that she wants it back. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.